Hey, Mark here. I just want to give you a quick heads up. So we had some slight technical difficulties in the beginning of this episode that do clear themselves up within a few minutes. We just wanted you to know that the first few minutes of this episode, the audio is not optimal. However, as always, this is a raucous episode, and it's actually filled with an amazing story about how our guest Niall bought Captain Ron at a secondhand store in France. It's beautiful. And it's way better than my story about how I bought Captain Ron from a gas station. So just hopefully you can bear with the audio difficulties in the beginning. Know they get better. Enjoy this episode. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Deep Blue Sea, the podcast. I am Jake Lewitt.
And I'm Mark Hoffmeyer.
And this week we are looking at chapter 32 of Deep Blue Sea, and we need a guest to do that. Now, our guest today, over on his site, moviesinfocus.com, he has said that nobody has an appreciation of Rennie Harlin's Deep Blue Sea like Movies in Focus, and that is something we're going to contest today because I feel like myself and Mark may give him a run for his money. Joining us today from Movies in Focus is Niall Brown. Niall, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, and it's fantastic to be talking about Deep Blue Sea.
And we were talking before we started recording, and you gave this a rewatch last night, and you said that it's pretty much, in your words, for what it is, it's a perfect movie, right?
It is. You know, it's one of those films, kind of like I put it on a par with the first Predator film, where you go into it thinking you're going to get a certain type of movie, and you come out of it and you've got that type of movie. And for an hour and 40 minutes, it delivers minute after minute, set piece after set piece. So I think it's, for what it is, it's flawless.
Oh, that makes me so happy to hear. And this is kind of crazy. I was doing some research about movie explosions. And I looked up the special effects supervisor for this movie, and his name is John Richardson. And he started off on Lawrence of Arabia. Then he worked on Dirty Dozen, Straw Dogs, Barry Lyndon, Omen, Superman, 9 Bond films, Lady Hawk, Willow, Cliffhanger, Starship Troopers.
Oh, wow.
All the Harry Potter films. And this is a guy who started in the industry way back in the day, and he said he's really good at his job because he knows how to blow things up safely. And that made me really happy just reading about this John Richardson and the movies he's worked on. And then I looked in further to him, and he loves working with Rennie Harlin because Rennie Harlin just loves blowing actual things up. So they kind of had a good relationship between Cliffhanger and Deep Blue Sea. But I think that's why this explosion today is comically and beautifully large. It's just a gnarly explosion courtesy of John Richardson, a guy who, I mean, he's worked on, he's like probably the biggest name, I guess, in the UK and the world since he's worked on all the Bond and Harry Potter movies. This dude knows his stuff, and he can blow stuff up with the best of them, and it makes me happy.
Has he done any other films with Rennie?
This was it. They just did Cliffhanger, and then they did Deep Blue Sea.
Because the explosion, I get memories of Die Hard 2.
Yes.
Yeah, again. You know, we had the shot when the helicopter exploded, there's an overhead shot of the explosion coming up, and we get the same thing here. So I'm surprised he didn't do that one as well. But that's Rennie's flourish, then, the overhead shot.
Yeah, so I wonder if he watched Die Hard 2 and then saw and appreciated the explosions, so then he got in touch with Rennie, and then they formed a beautiful duo for the next, for Cliffhanger and Deep Blue Sea. You know, and I was also looking at Screen Crush. They did a top 25 explosions ever. And in the top 15, they have Cutthroat Island when the boat explodes. And then they have number 10, The Long Kiss Goodnight, during that gigantic explosion I felt like everyone around that area would die. That's how huge that explosion was. So Rennie, oh man, I love this explosion. It's just watching this thing made me so happy.
So the Deep Blue Sea explosion isn't on that list?
Nope.
That's incorrect.
That's criminal.
Did you guys laugh? No, listen. I feel terrible because they show the shark getting away into the Deep Blue Sea. The shark's like, I succeeded.
I made it.
And then Kerplooey. And they make sure to show shark chunks.
Oh, yeah. It is raining guts everywhere.
This dropping shark chunks everywhere. And this poor shark who, thought it totally Shawshank Redemption. Its captors just blows up, and we watch pieces of it slap onto the deep blue sea. And I'm cheering, but then I'm also kind of bummed knowing that this shark was a prisoner who tried to escape, and now it's sushi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The sharks have been our kind of heroes throughout. They've been the victims of the whole thing. They're just trying to make things right. And yeah, I hadn't considered this climax from the shark's point of view, and now I'm just sad.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark.
Imagine somebody sort of kidnapped you, started doing scientific experiments on you, and then you think, yep, I finally made it away. I've got over the fence. And then you get torpedoed by dynamite. And then you're gone.
It's sad, too. I didn't remember the 2-second shot of the shark, us seeing the shark swim away. And it makes it even worse. Like, it's just, Rennie in this movie has been really mean. Like, we're talking Jim Whitlock, the death of Janice, and then just you're right, the shark is escaping, and it just gets exploded. But if it was... I think what makes it funny is just how big the explosion is.
Yes.
And that's a whopper.
But also, if the explosion was that big, Thomas Jane would also be blown up.
Well, yeah. I mean, I in researching today's episode, there is an episode of Mythbusters on this climax. I've never seen Mythbusters before. I'm aware of it, but this is the only episode I've watched. So it's from season 6, episode 13. Sorry, it's about phone book friction is the title, because they also look at if you interlace two phone books, can you pull them apart? But most of the show is detailing the climax of Deep Blue Sea, and one of the aspects I look at is if the explosion is big enough to look like this, would Thomas Jane also die? And the answer is yes, Thomas Jane would also die. Because he's about 50 feet from the explosion, and yes, he would die. He'd need to be, I think they worked out, 150 feet away to stand a chance of surviving. And but more funnier is the explosion size. They a few weeks ago we were looking at the flares, the kind of the gunpowder and the flares, and how much of explosion they'd get out of them. They reckon they can get 2.5 sticks of dynamite. That's implausible. But on Mythbusters, they did 3 experiments. One is they took the canister size that they used in Deep Blue Sea and filled that with explosives, just to kind of see how much that would be, and it's nothing. They made a big foam shark, and it took out a hole about the size of a fist from the size of it. So that shark would still survive. Then they did 2.5 sticks of dynamite wise, and that destroyed the shark, but it was kind of a small explosion from the surface. In order to replicate the size of this explosion, they needed 400 pounds of explosives, which was enough to fill 2 body bags. And that's what caused the Thomas Jane destroying explosion. Whether he would have survived the 2.5 sticks of dynamite one, they didn't give a result on that. I was a little disappointed. But yeah, he'd be dead. The shark would be dead. Everyone would be dead. There's no way that Preacher could have shot a harpoon with 400 pounds of dynamite stuck to the bottom of it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He would have been cubed, like in Resident Evil.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cubed.
He's the wrong.
Right through that fence.
He's the wrong side of the fence, but the explosion could have been big enough that the fence could have been pushed through him. So, I mean,
I love it though.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there was a freak wave or something that blocked it whilst it sort of came his direction.
Maybe.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's say that. And also, we've established that he's a bionic stud muffin. So maybe Susan McAllister has been loading him up with some of these things, putting it in his coffee. And he's now a mutant part shark.
Maybe.
Jeez Louise.
What's she done to the rest of the crew?
Another thing I want to say is, how relaxing was it to just watch Carter swim just relaxingly back to Preacher? It's very cathartic just watching him sort of saunter through the water. I don't know, Niall. Did you like seeing that, or are you stressed about other sharks?
Well, I'm actually stressed about the fact he got a torpedo through his leg that kind of ripped off at the fence. I mean, which he sort of takes in his stride.
He seems fine with everything that happened.
Fine, but he's okay.
Yeah, that's a lot of blood loss, isn't it? Because that thing went right through his leg, and then it gets ripped out.
When he gets up into the chapter, there's the big cut in his wetsuit trousers. So yeah, it ripped through the skin, ripped through the trousers. Oh,
but he's fine with it, So it's. But having said that, Preacher was also kind of grabbed by the shark, dragged under the water, and he's fine and willing to crack a couple of jokes. So
I mean, to quote Dr. Susan McAllister, he'll only be fine if they can make it to land. He shouldn't be awake right now.
But it's also the woman that says for Stellan Skarsgård, "I'm not that kind of doctor," so she doesn't really know.
That's true.
Oh.
That's very true. Yeah.
So she was wrong.
She was wrong.
I think this is blood. I'm really not sure.
I mean, you know what I do love about movies is I watch the Fast and Furious movies a lot. And in Fast and Furious 4, Dom is shot in the shoulder, and he just forgets about it later. And then in Triple X 3, the one with Donnie Yen and Tony Jaa, which is a lot of fun. I could have sworn there was a scene where Donnie Yen was gutted and then he died, but then he parachutes to Earth and he's fine. So I guess we just got to chalk it up to whatever is in this world of just a magical wound healing factor of these people.
Or Susan experimenting on the crew. She's given him regenerative abilities. Perhaps the wound is already mostly healed by the time he gets back. Who knows?
Whoa. And she's been doing it to Preacher too?
To everyone. The rest of the cast have been ripped in half. There's nothing she can do with that. But these two are the ones who've been lacerated here and there, and they're Wolverine healing as they go.
Well, if you also go back to Stellan Skarsgård, where he goes back into the water and the shark gets him within his teeth and fires him across at the glass window, he's still alive after he hits that window.
Yep. Mm-hmm. He
which
drowns.
is enough to actually break the window.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, you're right. That's some heavy metal right there that wonks against that. Every time we talk about it, though, I wish the shark missed and Stellan just smushes into the glass and then does the cartoon slide down even though it's in the water. Would that make it a better movie, Niall, or no? Would that just wreck all the momentum?
Well, you know what? There's so much momentum. Would it really ruin it?
That's true.
Okay, say that were to happen. Would the Sharks try and grab hold of him and go back around for another pitch? Like a strike two kind of thing?
No, they would go to the submarine and take a missile that's inside of it that we see for a second in the film and then smash it.
Which no one talks about at all.
Yeah. There could have been a submarine action scene in this film. How cool would that have been?
That'd be cool.
That would make it even better.
Yeah. In the wreck, that would be awesome if that was just kind of came to life. There had been people there the whole time. Just watching.
Hey, so Niall, what was your first experience with Deep Blue Sea? When did you catch this in theaters? When did you become part of the cult of DBS?
I saw it on the big screen back in 1999. So over here in the UK, it must have been probably September, October by the time we got to see it. And I saw it on the big screen and I came out and thought, God, I love that movie.
Yes.
And I've watched it probably 10 times since.
It's just... There's enough to it, right? I mean, what was the theater's reaction to Sam Jackson's death? Like, were people loving it? What was the action at the end when it was TJ and LL versus the Shark? Were people cheering? What was the atmosphere like?
I mean, you don't get much cheering over here in cinemas, but
it's not the done thing.
No, but I mean, the bit where Samuel L. Jackson sort of meets his demise is sort of because he was the big star in that movie at the time, and that was a sort of you've just killed the big star. What's going to happen next? All bets are off, and who's next?
Mm-hmm. Oh, and it has. I know we keep talking about this, but this movie just has a good, such a personality to it that keeps it. I don't know, that keeps people talking about it. I guess it's far from generic. That's for sure.
And you know what? Considering it's a bunch of people getting eaten by sharks, it's very good natured. It's kind of a fun film. It's not it's sort of a crowd pleaser.
That's a good point. Yeah, there's I would say the only horror part in this film is in Susan McAllister's locker when it's waiting for her.
Well, there's the faux horror bit when at her birthday party when she comes out when it's dark, and the opening scene is very much a horror trope of a monster attacking a kid sort of passing on a boat kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think you're right though. Remember in '99 when The Mummy came out, how much of a swashbuckling movie that was?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not really in that vein, but it's still a crowd. I guess Anaconda's like that too, right? Where there's just still a bunch of weirdo gonzo John Voight-isms. in it, some good humor.
I'd say it's on a level with the Mummy being the Mummy's got some horror-esque scenes, like the scarab beetles, like the guy who has his eyes